Hey, what's going on, my friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Victor, and today I'm going to share with you 5 things I think you should know about the Taurus solar eclipse happening on April 30th, 2022. Number 1, giving yourself permission to expand. Most of us go through life wanting for things, trying to create things, changes in our life, manifesting. And at the same time, most of us have these subconscious parts of ourselves that in a roundabout way tends to push away and sabotage the things we want, the things we deserve. But the problem is now, you deserve goodness in your life so much that you might find yourself where you start catching yourself when you start to push away the things you want and deserve in life. We all do this. We do this with the most important things in our life as well. We do this with our relationships. I know me, I've had good relationships that I've brought stress to. I've created drama with, and I've sabotaged. I've definitely done that with my financial situation for a very long time. I've done that with my life. How many of you have done that with your body, your health? Maybe you're like, it's New Year's and you're on a good kick and you're getting fit, and then all of a sudden, you don't know why, you binge out on some junk food. It's like we do this. We have this part of ourselves that at the core doesn't believe we deserve good things. And we feel uncomfortable. It feels foreign to us when good things try coming into our life. But the solar eclipse has such a bright, beautiful energy that it's coming around to say, listen, why don't you please stop doing that? Why won't you let the universe deliver to you what you deserve and have deserved for a very long time? And the way it will do this is by helping you broaden your perspective on yourself. What comes to mind is a good friend of mine named Drew. He's the owner of a very successful supplement company, and he's very well off, and he's like us. He's a real spiritual dude. He's kind of a hip guy. And I was at his house one time in Sedona when he was just moving into his new place. And Drew has some of the most gorgeous spiritual artwork I've ever seen in person. And he has this one painting. It's like this shaman goddess in a jungle with jaguars and colors and birds. It's like this beautiful, like, shamanic sort of goddess painting. And he has the original. In fact, I have like the canvas on my wall. I like it so much. He has the original though. Super epic painting. And anyway, I was at his house when he was just moving in. There was movers and boxes everywhere and just different things not yet settled in. And I noticed his painting was like up against the wall, like not yet hung up. And I noticed that probably because of the move, there was a little blemish. Maybe like a quarter size little smudge of dirt or something. And I thought, oh, interesting. And I say all this, I talk about my friend's beautiful painting because it reminds me of you. It reminds me of you. It reminds me of me. It reminds me of us, humanity, people. When you look at the totality of who you are, you're like that beautiful painting. But us, our cynical inner judgmental critic, what does it do? It focuses on it, dwells on it, it zeroes in on the blemish. That's all it sees. Our blemishes, our mistakes, our fault, our perceived faults. But when you put that puppy, that beautiful painting on the wall, you don't even notice the blemish. You're just taken back by how gorgeous that painting is. The blemish is there, but you don't notice it. And the solar eclipse is coming around to help you start looking at yourself in that exact same way. When's the last time you've celebrated or you've given yourself a hug or a pat on the back for the good you've done in the world, in other people's lives, the smart choices you've made, the positive things you brought to other people in your life? Most of us do nothing except dwell on the blemish. And the problem with that is it creates this very distorted self-image And this sort of like out of thin air created, synthesized false belief that says, I don't deserve anything because of this blemish. And the eclipse is saying, have you looked in the mirror? Have you ever thought to look beyond the blemish? It's time to start doing that, my friend. And you're going to find that you're going to have your own kind of awakening with this. You're going to have your own, I'm saying this, but I bet it's something you're either already experiencing or you will soon experience, especially as this Taurus solar eclipse starts to come in on April 30th. It's going to really start shining a light on the areas of yourself that are beautiful and glorious that maybe you haven't looked at in a little while. And maybe it's time you start doing that so that you and me and everybody, we can have a more well-rounded self-image that finally stops pushing away the love, the abundance, and the happiness from our life. Number 2, I wrote down, tested by your higher self. This can sound like a bad thing, but it's actually a beautiful thing. And it's indicative of a huge transformation that you've went through. What comes to mind is this guy named Bashar. I talk about him all the time on my channel, actually. He's a really good channeler. And he says sometimes the first sort of sign that we've truly changed and transformed and shifted is not necessarily that our environment or our circumstances change. It's the recognition that we have changed based upon our response to whatever's going on. So when I say tested by your higher self, what I mean is that you might notice like echoes from your past playing out in your life, maybe a familiar scenario or circumstance, energy dynamic, maybe like an old synchronicity, all reflecting not who you are now, but who you used to be. And it's almost more pleasing to witness yourself responding more gracefully, more consciously, more from like a neutral standpoint than it is to have just shifted the problem away. Because whatever the problem is, it's not really a problem when you're not energetically entangled with it. You're just sort of neutral. It's like nothing. It's like a cloud passing by. It means nothing to you. And these sort of phony synchronicities, these echoes of the past, are here as the first sign that you've made a major change, mainly in your vibration and your self-image and your sense of like worthiness and what you deserve out of life. Maybe what's unfolding in front of you is something you used to feel that you sort of deserved to happen to you. And now it's happening and you're like, whoa, this is not right. This is out of place. I'm also pretty emotionally unattached regardless, but I now know this no longer is going to be a part of my reality. An example that comes to mind from my own life is I've had this sort of concern that I'm a bad parent, that I'm like a selfish father. Now anybody that knows me, all my friends, they think it's like the most ridiculous thing because I spend so much time and energy with my children. It's almost, if anything, borderline too much for them. But like I was saying before, there have been mistakes I've made as a parent. I have my own blemishes that I have for a long time kind of dwelled upon. And because this belief that I'm a bad parent is so ingrained in me for some reason, because I've chosen to dwell on my mistakes so much, I will attract sometimes like what I call a negative synchronicity that something is going to happen to my kids because I deserve it, because I'm a bad parent. And anyway, one of my synchronicities has to do with fire. And just the other day I was at the park with my wife and my 2 boys, and my 12-year-old was like staying home, and she texts my wife and she said, the smoke alarms are going off. What should I do? And again, fire to me is like it used to provoke a lot of fear and anxiety, and especially in relation to my kids. But when that happened, I found myself completely like I just knew it was fine. I was not emotionally triggered like I was before. I was not emotionally triggered at all. And in the past, that same text would have literally thrown me through a freaking loop. You have no idea how paranoid. I would have rushed home. Even though I knew it was fear-based, I would have done that. But I responded completely differently. And it wasn't a matter of needing no hint of danger to surround my kid. It was more like I now am more clear with myself. I hope that made sense. That might have sounded a bit confusing. That's my best way to explain phony synchronicity or echoes from your past that have let you know just how much you've changed. This next point is I wrote down passion project and co-creating something awesome. As you start to allow yourself to expand and come alive, you might find that there's a lot of space now in your life, a lot of room, a lot of opportunity. And usually what happens in this type of energy is we start wanting to create something. So you might find yourself inspired with some good ideas coming through, channeling through. And it's just a really good time to start working towards something involved with your passion, a passion project. And I know a lot of very creative people, a lot of people like you guys that watch my channel that are so full of potential, have such a rare connection to like spirit, where whatever they do could be immaculate, just awesome and game-changing for people, but they doubt themselves, they question their ability, and consequently they hesitate. They don't start anything. They might have a lot of ideas, a lot of inspirations, a lot of that connection, but when it comes time to like taking action, it's difficult. And this is something I can relate to as well. But what I've learned, and I want to share it with you, is when you do a real passion project, when you are inspired to do something, even if you have no idea how it's going to unfold, even if your mind can look at it with skepticism and think, wow, this is sort of far-fetched, I kind of have a long way to go, it doesn't matter. And here's why. Because when it's inspired, truly, then it's a co-creative effort. You are the one who needs to get the ball rolling as the human, the person, the character. You got to start. But when you start, that's when the guidance comes in. That's when the creation takes on a whole life of its own. And the more you start and go for it, the less of a role you have and the more co-creative it really becomes. And I've learned this has happened to me so many times. For example, like when I started running retreats, I felt this inspiration to do a retreat. But as you can imagine, it created a lot of concern that maybe I'm not going to be able to deliver. Who am I to put on a retreat? Am I some guru? I'm not. I'm just some random guy who likes to make YouTube videos. Who am I to do this? But I've learned long ago to just sort of go with it anyway. And I learned to listen to that inspiration and trust that I'm getting this sort of inspiration for a reason. This download isn't coming to me by chance, it's coming to me. And it means that there's a way it can be carried out in a very worthwhile way. And what happened is I started running the retreats in spite of my doubts. You know, the first one I just did my best. I just did what I possibly could. And even that very first one, after like a day of like me sort of settling in, the way I would describe it is the retreat itself took on a will of its own. And it became very clear what the retreat, what the project wanted to do. And then my relationship with it was very intuitive, and I was merely playing off of the thing, the creative energy. And now I've done like probably 25 retreats maybe total of all the different types I do. And I know I just have to show up and do my best and listen, and it just happens. But it wasn't like that in the very beginning is my point. In the very beginning, I had to set a date and say, guys, I'm doing a retreat. Oh, I hope it goes well. I had to like do my best creating it. And in the beginning, it wasn't highly inspired. It wasn't very guided, but I just did my best. But because I started like the manifestation mechanism, I put it into motion, boom, 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 and then that happened. So right now is a great time, my friend. If you have an inspiration, I pray that you do it. And just hopefully me sharing my experience with how these inspired passion projects can sometimes go down, hopefully it will give you that little nudge just to get out there and start and do your best and know that you will have some assistance. This next one I wrote down, it's a great time to wire in the new you. A lot of this Taurus eclipse on April 30th, that the energy is going to be really making you aware of how much you've already changed and all the different ways I've shared. And even though that's true, you're almost like, you might find yourself kind of like newly, like you just become this new you, and it's new and it's fresh and you know it's true, you know it's who you are, but there might feel like there's some momentum from your past conditioning, your habits in particular. So you might catch yourself as the new you, witnessing yourself doing things, behaviors, habits as an example, that are like now very clearly not in alignment with who you are. Where it's like, I don't need to eat like ice cream every night. This is ridiculous. This is not helping me. This is messing with my vibe and I don't like it, but I still feel a compulsion to doing it, even though I know better. That's why I said it's a good time to wire in new habits, because in my experience, someone who's had a lot of experience with addiction, I was a heroin addict, I used to smoke cigarettes, I've just have an addictive personality to this day. I've learned that you can know better. I knew it was very unwise to use heroin. I knew smoking cigarettes was very bad for my health. I would get sick all the time, it hurt my lungs, but it was a habit. It had its own momentum. And even though I knew better, I had to like consciously and with a little bit of grind and willpower, quite frankly, establish and almost force in new habits. Even though it felt against the grain, it felt at a time natural, comfortable to pollute my lungs with cigarette smoke, even though I knew better. So to break that, I had to create new habits and again, use some like good old fashioned willpower to do that. But right now is a good time to do that because you may have tried that in the past, but that doesn't work. Forcing new habits when there's a deep part of you that is getting something out of this other old habit, that's like, it doesn't work. It reminds me of what my therapist, my guy Doug says. He talks about the monkeys and the elephants. He says the mind is like the monkeys riding the elephant. Right? And the monkeys can decide, let's go this way. Good luck persuading something as big as an elephant to do that, because that's like the body. The elephant's like our body, it's like your conditioning, and even though you know better, your body is going to do what it does. Now here's kind of almost like a flip-flop of that. You might find that you've changed, the elephants have changed, but the monkeys, they're still patterned to want to go over here when you want them to go this way. So you have to kind of convince the monkeys to go this way. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing, my friends. It's a great time to start a new habit that is a reflection and a representation of the new you. I bet you'll find you have a lot more success this time because you've done the necessary inner shifts to really wire it in. Number 5, this transformation being greatly amplified by this Taurus solar eclipse is going to help you to a very noticeable degree, as sort of, I don't know, bold as it might sound. It's going to help you break free from what people call, as a blanket term for the 3D matrix. I read this book a little while ago called Hive, and it just goes into the science of just to the degree that our sense of self is completely a product of like our conditioning, of society, of the values, of our culture, of our parents. And like our sense of me is so oftentimes distanced from the real me, the real you. And this eclipse is really gonna make you aware of that. You might find in sort of a practical way that your new and your like the aspirations, the way where you want to go in life, like currently, is going to be very much against the grain. Very, very different than what like normal people would do. And I invite you to like go with that. Be the weird one who's actually free from this sort of prison matrix of 3D, you could call it. And it's a really good time to just be your bold, true self. And I'll give an example. Just yesterday with my coach, with my group, I was running what I call a channel goal setting workshop. And one of the things I have them do is I have them get into a really good state of being, to get into a good mood, so that they're like thinking positively. And then I play some cool music and I say, okay guys, write down all the things you want to accomplish or experience in the next 10 years of your life. So from this sort of expansive state, people start just flowing, like writing down, I want to do this, you know? And then after that, I stop the music and I let some people come up and share. And the pattern was so clear, so crystal clear, and it was so awesome. What do you, these people who are like you guys, by the way, the things they wanted are very unconventional. None of them said, I want to make X amount of money per month. None of them said, I want to really, get this higher position at my job. None of them said, I have this my sight set on this like really nice house, this car. None of that. Everybody, pretty much everybody, like out of 10 people I like brought up, they wanted to like have a life where they're sharing their wisdom, sharing, teaching, healing, helping. And they wanted to kind of travel, most people. So it's like they wanted to kind of, that's a very unique type of goal that is not common for like most people. And to me, it's a sign of their true awakening. They're not buying in to this elusive carrot on the stick we call the American dream. They're not buying into that old story that leaves people old and unsatisfied and wondering where their life went. This is an example and a time for you guys to wake up and say, man, even though there's this like societal momentum where everyone just like sheep just traveling this way because it's ingrained, it just seems like the right thing to do, you're gonna be like, no, that is very unappealing to me. I want this. I want the simple life. I want to farm. I want to live off the land. I want to help people. I want to have good friends. I want to meet my soulmate. I want to fall in love. I want to be healthy. I want to appreciate my life. These are like the kinds of goals that sort of woke people start to have. And you might have found that for a long time as you were going through your awakening, there was a part of you that still secretly maybe bought in to this sort of vibe, this mentality, this trajectory. But this eclipse is coming in to really like wake you up to your power, wake you up to what you truly deserve out of life. And from this like clear perspective, when you're seeing the whole painting, as I mentioned earlier, where you want to go in life, what you want to create and experience will become very crystal clear. And it will be very, very different likely than the way you used to think and the way most people think. And I say, thank goodness. Go with it. If you don't have anybody in your life encouraging to be your bold, unique self, please let me be the one to do that. Be your bold, unique self. The world needs it. A lot of the people who are buying into this sort of ideology and whatnot, they just don't know any better. And we didn't either. But you do. And it's your obligation to be yourself. Not to convert people, but so people eventually start looking over and seeing there are other options. We came to change the world by simply living an authentic life. And if enough people do this, eventually more and more people will turn their heads and say, whoa, those guys look pretty happy. Maybe there's something to this. And just by way of being a good example of an empowered, sovereign being, free, we will change the world.